Hi, I'm Dr. Luana Marques. I'm a clinical psychologist at Mass General Hospital. I'm delighted to speak to you today about managing stress and psychological complications during the COVID-19 crisis. I have no disclosures. The world as we knew it has significantly changed. In addition to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're also facing significant disproportionate effects for several of our populations, including our ethnic minorities and our homeless population. We're also facing difficulties with food, shelter, work, and racism. As the threats increased, it certainly affected all of our brains. Our limbic system, the emotional part of our brain, is activated when perceiving a threat, and currently, we're facing many threats. In milliseconds, our body turns on, and the heart starts to pound, we tense up, we're ready to fight, flight, and free. It's a biologically adaptive response to a threat. Anxiety is biologically adaptive, yet only up to a point. This response needs to be thought of through the Yerkes-Dodson law, which teaches us that there is an inverse relationship between our arousal, our anxiety level, our fight or flight response, and our ability to perform in the many domains of our lives. Think about it this way. In the low end of this curve, in the left here, low levels of arousal also leads to low levels of performance. Think about this as waking up in the morning and not having your first cup of coffee. You may feel still a little sleepy, sluggish, feeling a little tired. However, as that arousal increases, so does our performance. At a moderate levels of arousal, we have peak performance. Individuals often report this as feeling in the zone. When they feel like they can do anything, their brain is on. However, as the days move to weeks and moves to months, we've all moved from an acute stressor to a chronic stress. Over 2/3 of Americans are now worried about a second coronavirus wave in the fall. As the stress moved from acute to chronic, it also moved us off the zone to the right side of this curve, where increase in arousal leads to actually decrease in our performance. This is where anxiety, stress, impaired performance feels like too much. So how do I know when I have tipped past the zone before we even talk about how to get you back to the zone? Well, 3 things that I think is worth to watch for on a daily basis to help you understand if you're past that zone. The first one is really understanding what you're saying to yourself. What are your thoughts like? Are you saying things like, there's nothing that I can do? I'll never be able to support my family. I'll never be safe. When our brain is on the red zone, it tends to be a little rigid. It tends to be black and white. And those thoughts tend to lead to significantly stronger emotions. So the second step is not only what you're saying to yourself, but what are you feeling in your body? What does your emotions look like? And finally, have you changed your behavior? Sometimes you might find yourself glued to your phone or having trouble getting up in the morning. I've heard from some of our hearers that they're working so much that they may have forgotten some basic needs as food during their shifts. So 3 steps to really understanding yourself and if you potentially are tipped off the zone: your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. Next, let's think a little bit about what does that mean in terms of mental health consequences related to COVID-19. What we know is that at the individual level, 1/3 of American adults are reporting clinical signs of anxiety and depression. We know that anxiety and depression symptoms have tripled, with the highest rates among our Black individuals, which is not surprising given the disproportionate effect of COVID-19 in our ethnic minority groups. The outcome in terms of mental health has also been significant among healthcare workers. A paper published in JAMA in early March suggested a cross-sectional survey among 1,250 healthcare workers from 34 hospitals demonstrated a significant increase on mental health concerns. Specifically, 31% reported distress, 50% of frontline workers reported depression, 45% anxiety, and 34% insomnia. So at an individual level, And at every individual level, we are seeing an uptick in emotional health concerns related to COVID-19 and the other threats related to it. So, what can I do about my anxiety and worries? Now that we understand that anxiety is biologically adaptive, but up to a point, that when we tip over that point, it affects our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, and it has significantly increased globally. Well, there's some skills that you can certainly use no matter where you are that can be very helpful. All of the skills are designed to turn on a different part of your brain. It's designed to turn on your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain. What we know scientifically is that when the prefrontal cortex is activated, it actually decreases that emotional part of their brain, the limbic response. All of the skills that I'll talk to you a little bit about are based on something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT is an evidence-based type of psychotherapy that is short and across many randomized control trials have shown to be extremely effective to bringing down depression, anxiety, increasing well-being. But CBT is also effective in actually doing something important during a pandemic. It also has demonstrated across many studies to be able to boost our immune system. Now, I'm not asking any of you to become therapists. What I'm suggesting is that we think about skills, not therapy. In particular, there are 5 skills that I find to be particularly helpful to cool off your brain during times they're challenging, like a pandemic. We'll talk about each one of those skills, why we should be doing it, and how to engage on it. Unplug and anchor. What do I mean by unplug? I mean getting off the news a little bit, unplugging from your computer, from the television. Why? Well, we know that research related to the marathon bombings in Boston suggested that individuals that watch 6+ hours of daily media after the bombings actually showed higher level of distress than those that actually were there during the bombing. So we know that being on and plugged actually activate your limbic systems. So we want to actually unplug, but the brain might actually be still spinning. And so what we need to do, well, we first need to figure out how we're going to do this. And the first step would be to either anchor on the guidelines of the WHO, which suggests that you watch the news maybe once or twice a day. Or one suggestion I've given to a lot of my patients recently is to go back to your media consumption pre-pandemic. I understand this challenge. Your brain is stuck with uncertainty, and yet we really want to cool off your brain. Now, once you are off the news, it's important to anchor on something that allows you to slow down your brain. Taking a deep breath, going for a walk, having a moment of gratitude. You probably know yourself much better than I do. Whatever you feel like allows your brain to slow down is what you want to anchor on. Second, we need to charge up. What do I mean by charging up? And why would we want to do it? Well, our bodies are very similar to the batteries of our car. What I mean by that is to recharge our batteries in our car, we actually have to drive our car. If you go away for a long time and your car is not being driven, the batteries die. Now, when we're stuck and we're feeling anxious and we're off of that zone, well, often what happens is we feel like doing nothing. Well, that's the opposite of what we need to do. To charge up, we need to spend energy to get energy. And so how do we do this? 3 basic things that you've heard again and again are extremely important to get your body charged up: eating, sleeping, and exercise. Now, I know many of you have heard the importance of this through your life, but I want to anchor a little more on science here. Why is it so important to eat during this time? Well, because we know that when we are limiting food, we have decrease in cognitive function and decrease in learning. And we also know that eating allows you to have more plasticity in your brain and improve your memories. So for you to get back to the zone, making sure that your body is also fueled is important. In moments of difficulties, when your brain is spinning, sometimes individuals either forget to eat or eat too much. A suggestion I have here is to actually schedule when you're going to have meals. And if at all possible, make it social. One thing that I've recommended to my team in my lab here at Mass General is to do a casual lunch over Zoom. I know we are all perhaps too much on the computer, but social support is important. And if you can combine social support with eating, we are also nurturing different parts of our brain. Sleep. Sleep is crucial to be able to cool off our brain. What we know is that sleep deprivation actually turns on the emotional part of our brain, our fight or flight, our amygdala reaction. We also know that sleep deprivation decreases our immune systems. So although sleep is crucial, it's one of the areas that I know is challenging right now. So I have a few tips on how to do this. First, unplug, unplug, and unplug. Reduce screen time, especially as it gets closer to bedtime, so that your brain gets time to cool off a bit. Second, sometimes eating a small snack might be helpful before bed. Third, if you're sitting in bed, you're laying in bed, and you're spinning and you haven't been able to sleep for at least 20 minutes, get out of bed. Fourth, maintain a regular sleep schedule. Give your brain the predictability of when you're going to wake up and go to bed. Now, my recommendations now are that you're also very gentle to yourself, given that we're all facing a lot, and that you practice sleep hygiene to your best of your ability, knowing that our brains are perhaps spinning a little more than usual. Let's talk finally about exercise. It's well documented that exercise decreases depression and increases well-being. Now here, I want us to think about exercise as moving our bodies. Practicing yoga with your kids at home, dancing at work, doing anything that allows you to charge up. Across the skills to charge up, I want to remind you again to be kind to yourself. Although they are scientifically sound, they are designed to cool off your brain, to bring down that limbic reaction and turn on your prefrontal cortex. It's also challenging to do this all the time. So really try as best as you can. The next skill that I want to talk a little bit about is facing reality. Well, currently, all of us are facing a lot of uncertainty. Our brains are actually designed to want things to stay steady. Our brain does not like what we call cognitive dissonance, when things don't match. Well, what does uncertainty do to our brain? It creates a lot of cognitive dissonance. It's hard to figure out what tomorrow look like. And in fact, I would go as far to say that the only certainty we have right now is a bit of uncertainty when it comes to this pandemic, as it's changing so fast. So how do we cool off our brain? What do we do to help with uncertainty? Well, the first step is really to focus on what you can control. Can you charge up? Can you sleep? Can you make sure that you are hanging out with friends and family? Can you make a schedule? A schedule is something that really helps your brain. So before going to bed today, you make a schedule for tomorrow so that your brain knows a little more what to expect. The second piece of facing reality is to also understand that during challenging times, we're all going to feel a bit comfortably uncomfortable. I think about this as riding a tall wave, and at times it's hard, and you may not have a lot of training in surfing here, but it's important to stick to it and trying to get to shore the best as you can, understanding that we're not going to be completely comfortable right now. Next, I want to shift to talk about staying connected. We know through research that actually connection through Facebook compared to face-to-face is also shown to decrease depression and anxiety and increase life satisfaction. Now, many times when I give this presentation, folks ask me, well, are you suggesting that we're connecting only at Facebook? No, we all want to be close to our loved ones, but I'm here to remind us that that connection, even electronically, is scientifically shown to help with our emotional difficulties during challenging times. The good news in terms of staying connected is that all of us have been able to pivot quite quickly and quite fast to be able to connect through technology and finding ways to be there for each other. I've seen news of reading along with online book apps while self-isolating during coronavirus. Individuals have become creative. And I think the important message here is to not only stay connected, but also try to remind ourselves to connect to our elderlies and those who might be in isolation. Finally, I want to talk about being of service. Many of you in the mental health and the healthcare at large are heroes and being in the front line. And I really want to thank you for being of service. As I'm sure you know firsthand, being of service to others decreases depression, increase happiness, allows us to actually cool off our brain. I personally can tell you that days that I'm stressed, when I'm there with my patients, my brain certainly is more focused. I'm there to be of service. I'd like to invite all of us to think about opportunities to be of service in every moment possible. So, giving dosages, being there to clap as patients getting out of the hospital, or if you see a colleague that you can see struggling a little bit, just approaching and being kind and being there for them. Finally, I want to remind all of us that we're facing very challenging times. Yet we know that after a traumatic event, 50% of individuals still display resilience. So, regardless of how tall your wave is that you personally feel like you're surfing right now, I want you to remind yourself that you're resilient, that anxiety is biologically adaptive, wired to protect us from threat up to a point. That the skills that we talked about today are science-driven ways to ensure that you continue to build resilience during this pandemic. I want to finish with providing with additional resources that are available to continue to support your journey on building resilience. We created a series of webinars that go in much more depth about the skills that I shared with you today, and those are available through the Harvard Health Publishing website. Here at Mass General, we are actually launching on July 10th an online course for mental health for all, which actually will allow you to interact and learn how to use the skills. And again, it's skills, not therapy. And finally, there are also global resources on my website, drluana.com. I want to finish by thanking my amazing team here at Mass General, especially for the support in putting the slides together. And I want to thank each one of you for everything that you're doing. I urge you to continue to use the skills to build resilience during these difficult times. Thank you.